Hey everyone, welcome to today's deep dive. We're about to explore a topic that might seem simple at first glance, peace. But as we dig into this excerpt from a video called The Peace from Jesus, I have a feeling things are going to get pretty thought-provoking.
You're right, it's not always as straightforward as it seems. You see, we often link peace with quiet, a world without conflict. But history reveals a much more complicated and even contradictory understanding of peace, especially when we look back at first-century Judea.
Okay, so we're talking about peace, but maybe not the peace dove and olive branch kind of peace. I'm intrigued. To be honest, when I hear about Jesus and peace, I tend to think about inner peace, that sense of calm you can hold on to no matter what's happening around you.
That's certainly a common way to understand it. But this video wants us to go beyond that initial understanding and examine what peace meant to those who heard Jesus speak in first-century Judea.
It's like there's a whole deeper level we're missing. How does this video go about uncovering that then?
The video focuses on two key things: the actual language used and the historical context. It points out that in John 14:27, Jesus makes a clear distinction between the peace he offers and the peace of the world.
So it's not just that he's talking about a different kind of peace. He's saying it's different from what everyone else considers peace. That already changes how I'm thinking about this. Okay, so Jesus is drawing this contrast between his peace and the peace of the world. But to really get what he meant, we need to put ourselves in the shoes of these first-century listeners. Paint me a picture. What did peace even look like in Judea back then?
Well, it was certainly a far cry from what we might picture. Judea under Roman rule was a place of immense tension and unrest. Many Jewish people were longing for a Messiah, someone to finally bring peace to their land. But their idea of how that peace would be achieved might surprise you.
I'm starting to realize peace back then wasn't quite as peaceful as we might imagine. So how did they think this Messiah would bring about peace?
They envisioned a much more, you could say, forceful kind of peace, one achieved through victory over their Roman oppressors. They believed the Messiah would come in power and might, potentially even through military means, Very different from the image of Jesus turning the other cheek that we often think of.
Wow, a warrior Messiah. It really flips the script on how we usually picture Jesus.
It certainly does. And then you have the Roman perspective to consider as well, which adds another layer of complexity. They had their own version of peace, known as Pax Romana.
Pax Romana, right, I remember that term. But give me a refresher. What did it really mean?
In essence, it was peace through absolute domination. Rome imposed its version of peace by crushing any form of opposition, often brutally. What's fascinating and a little unnerving is that this very method, the brutality of Roman peace, even crucifixion itself, is actually referenced in the Gospels.
That sends chills down my spine, thinking about it like that. So you've got both the Jews and the other Romans with these ideas of peace that ultimately rely on force and dominance, which makes you wonder, how on earth did Jesus' message of peace break through all of that?
Yeah.
It really makes you think, we've got these two dominant ideas of peace back then, Roman peace and the Jewish hope for a Messiah, both rooted in power and control. And then Jesus comes along and it's like he's speaking a completely different language.
That's what's so radical about his message, He isn't offering peace through violence, through conquering, through forcing everyone to agree. He's pointing to something entirely different. Peace through self-sacrifice, peace through his own death.
Wait, hold on. How does that bring peace? Especially in that context. It seems, counterintuitive, to say the least.
Right. You'd think it would have the opposite effect. But the video makes this really interesting point. It argues that Jesus' death, the way it's presented in the Gospels, isn't supposed to be seen as a defeat. It's meant to be seen as the ultimate victory, but not a victory over flesh and blood, a victory over the powers of sin and death themselves.
Okay, now my mind is really blown. That changes everything about how you'd read those verses about peace, about having courage, even when everything seems terrifying. It's not about escaping hardship. It's about something deeper.
Exactly. It's about finding a peace that transcends our circumstances, even in the face of death itself. And as this video points out, even Jesus' closest disciples, the ones who knew him best, struggled to wrap their heads around this at first.
Which makes total sense when you think about it. They were expecting a warrior king who'd overthrow Roman rule. To go from that expectation to witnessing Jesus' crucifixion, talk about a paradigm shift. It's like their whole understanding of peace, of everything, was shattered.
And yet, isn't that often how we encounter truly transformative ideas? They shake us to our core, forcing us to confront our assumptions and embrace a whole new way of seeing the world.
It makes you think, if Jesus' definition of peace was so radically different, so countercultural, What does that mean for us today? How do we even begin to understand peace through that same lens, especially in a world that still seems so drawn to power and dominance?
That's the question, isn't it? It's a question worth sitting with, wrestling with. If true peace isn't about achieving victory on our own terms, but about embracing a different kind of power, the power of love, of forgiveness, even of sacrifice, then how does that change the way we live, the way we interact with the world around us?
So much to ponder. It's like this deep dive has taken us way beyond just a simple definition of peace. It's challenged us to consider what we truly value, what we're willing to live and even die for.
And ultimately, that's the power of a deep dive like this one. It's not just about acquiring knowledge, it's about allowing that knowledge to change us, to shape us into people who seek a different kind of peace, a peace that the world can't give and can't take away.
Beautifully said. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. We hope this deep dive has sparked something in you, a desire to grapple with these big questions and discover what peace truly means in your own life. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.